The alien council chamber was eerily silent, the faint hum of technological machinery the only sound breaking the tension that had settled over the room. The walls, lined with dark, reflective material, mirrored the cold blue light emanating from a series of floating holographic screens. Each screen displayed the same image: Earth's slowest warship, the Tempest. The ship's hulking, outdated form looked like a relic from an ancient war, its engines sputtering, its hull scarred by years of neglect. A tall, imposing figure in the center of the room, Commander Zhyvok, regarded the projection with a bemused expression. His species, the Zilthari, had watched humanity for years, their interest piqued by the strange, unpredictable nature of the human race. But this was beyond absurd. The Tempest was nothing more than a joke, a symbol of humanity's weakness. Is this truly their most advanced ship? Zhyvok's voice reverberated through the chamber, dripping with disdain. His alien physiology was both graceful and terrifying, with elongated limbs and eyes that seemed to glow with an inner fire. His tone was as sharp as his features. Around him, the rest of the council, seated in their high-backed chairs, exchanged glances. A few of them snickered, while others merely stared, unmoved. All had come to the same conclusion. Earth's military strength was a thing of the past. Humanity had never been much of a threat in the grand scheme of the galaxy. Pathetic, muttered Zhyvok's second-in-command, a creature with 4 eyes and a body covered in iridescent scales. It's as if they have no concept of technology's true potential, the others murmured in agreement, but Zhyvok raised a hand, silencing them. I want to see how they will perform in this mission, he said, a wicked grin creeping across his face. Let them think they are important. Let them throw their best at us. After all, the Tempest will be nothing more than a diversion. Zhyvok's voice rang with confidence. He had seen countless species rise and fall, and Earth was no different. He believed that the humans, despite their resilience, were destined for extinction. The galaxy had evolved, and humanity had simply failed to keep up. Their slowest ship, incapable of withstanding even the smallest threat, would be no different. The ship's mission was simple: reconnaissance. No weapons, no grand strategy. They were to gather information on an uninhabited star system that the Zilthari were interested in. An insignificant task, really. Zhyvok and his council had sent them to their doom, confident that no matter how they maneuvered, the humans would be powerless in the face of superior technology. As the chamber's lights flickered momentarily, the alien leader turned his attention to the console, where the live feed from the Tempest appeared. A human officer, gruff and serious, stood in front of the camera, his eyes scanning the readings before him. "This is Captain Elias Drake of the Tempest," the man's voice crackled through the speakers. "We are proceeding as planned, heading toward the system you've indicated." Everything seemed routine. Zhyvok's lip curled in amusement. "They are already out of their depth. The Tempest will never survive long enough to complete the mission." As the ship entered the Zilthari-controlled star system, the aliens laughed among themselves, their confidence unwavering. But what they didn't realize was that the Tempest was not as it appeared. Beneath the surface of the seemingly outdated vessel, a series of hidden technologies lay dormant, waiting to be activated. Humanity had learned to survive through innovation, and even their most neglected ships carried weapons and tools that no one outside Earth could fully comprehend. Captain Drake's voice broke through the Council's laughter, now with an edge of quiet determination. "We're cloaking now. Stay alert. This isn't just a reconnaissance mission anymore." The crew aboard the Tempest knew what was at stake. They knew they were being underestimated, and they knew that their only chance of survival was to strike first. "We'll need to make it count," Drake continued, his voice steady, though the tension was palpable. The Zilthari think we're just a relic of the past. It's time they learned otherwise. The ship's engines, once thought to be weak and unreliable, hummed with a new kind of energy. Drake had given the order to activate the cloaking device. The humans had discovered a way to turn the old, slow ship into something far more dangerous. They had found a way to hide in plain sight. From Zivok's perspective, the feed on the screen appeared unchanged. He was so focused on the weak technology of the Tempest that he failed to notice the subtle shift in the ship's movement, how it had gone silent, how its presence in the vastness of space had become almost imperceptible. The rest of the council watched, waiting for the expected failure, but Zivok's attention never wavered from the projection. He waited for the moment when the human ship would be torn apart, when it would reveal its weakness in the face of superior firepower. But that moment didn't come. Instead, something far more unsettling happened. A soft beep echoed through the council chamber. Zivok's gaze flickered to a new screen, one that had been brought up at the side of the room. It displayed a small fleet of Zilthari warships, each one capable of wiping out entire fleets with a single strike. There were 50 of them scattered across the system in an array of precision formations. At first, nothing seemed unusual. The ships moved in sync, their weapons ready, their crews confident. But then Zivok's sharp eyes caught something, a flicker on the edge of his sensor readouts, a strange anomaly, one that didn't belong. "Commander," one of his officers whispered, their voice filled with disbelief, "the Tempest is moving toward the fleet." Zivok's heart skipped a beat. He reached for the controls, but his fingers hesitated above the buttons. Was this the human ship's final mistake, or had they truly done something unexpected? The screen shifted, showing the Tempest now on an intercept course with the Zilthari fleet. Zivok's eyes widened as the ship accelerated, but there was no typical show of force, no loud booming blast, just a quiet, unnerving stillness as the Tempest cut through the vastness of space like a phantom. And then, all at once, the fleet erupted in chaos. The first Zilthari ship detonated without warning, a massive explosion tearing through its hull. The fleet scattered in disarray, some ships colliding as their systems failed. The others tried to fire, but it was too late. The Tempest had already vanished again, cloaked and silent. Another ship exploded, then another. The council was paralyzed. Zivok watched in stunned silence as the fleet was decimated, not by overwhelming force, but by the quiet, calculated precision of a ship they had once mocked. The Zilthari commander tried to speak, but the words caught in his throat. "Impossible," he muttered, eyes wide. "How could this be?" Captain Drake's voice, calm and unwavering, echoed in the silent chamber. "You've underestimated us for too long. Humanity has more to offer than you ever realized." And with that, the cold, eerie silence of the council chamber was broken, replaced with a rising wave of fear. Fear not of the humans, but of their potential. The Zilthari fleet, once a symbol of invincible power, was in chaos. Explosions rocked the otherwise serene expanse of space, each one a brutal testament to humanity's underestimated strength. The Tempest, Earth's slowest, most obsolete warship, had torn through the alien fleet with an eerie quietness that matched the isolation of its name. The once dominant Zilthari ships now flailed in panic, systems failing as the Tempest vanished into the depths of space, cloaked in silence. Commander Zivok's hands were trembling. He had never anticipated this. The Tempest was supposed to be a joke, an afterthought in the grand scheme of galactic military might. Yet here it was, shattering the Zilthari fleet with terrifying precision. Zivok's eyes darted across the chamber, his mind struggling to piece together what had just happened. There had been no warning, just an explosion, then another, followed by the disintegration of ships faster than the council could react. This can't be real," Zivok muttered, his voice trembling with disbelief. He looked again at the broken screen, the remnants of his fleet slowly drifting into the cold void. One ship remained, the Tempest, and the commander could hear the whispers of his officers, their voices laden with confusion and fear. The reality was setting in. They had made a grave mistake. Meanwhile, aboard the Tempest, Captain Elias Drake stood in front of the tactical display, his expression calm and unshaken. His crew had followed their orders with precision, each step taken with deadly intent. Drake had always known that the Tempest wasn't just a ship, it was humanity's final play. For years, Earth had been pushed aside, its military power dismissed as obsolete. Now, it was time to show the galaxy what humanity could do with limited resources and a fierce desire to survive. "Captain, we've neutralized 23 ships," Lieutenant Foster reported, her voice laced with disbelief. "The Zilthari are disorganized and we're still cloaked. We could hit again if you give the order." Drake glanced over at the tactical screen, his eyes narrowing. The remaining fleet, what was left of the Zilthari's pride, had scattered like frightened animals. Their once imposing formations were now a mess of panic and confusion. It was almost too easy. The ship's sensors were still pinging with data, but most of the fleet had already been neutralized in the first few strikes. "Hold fire for now," Drake ordered, his voice steady. "Let's see how they respond. We want them to feel trapped before we finish the job." As he spoke, his mind raced. The Tempest had been fitted with a range of cloaking technologies, adapted from older, almost forgotten prototypes, and had been retrofitted with EMP devices, precision missile strikes, and nanotechnology designed for surgical strikes on ships much larger than theirs. The ship's slowness had always been a source of mockery, but it had been its greatest asset. By cloaking and striking with such precision, the Tempest could move through space like a ghost, and the Zilthari would never see it coming. Back in the Zilthari Command Center, Zhyvok struggled to regain control. His officers moved frantically, trying to stabilize their remaining ships, but it was futile. The damage had been done. The technology they had thought was superior was now rendered useless against the unexpected might of Earth's most unassuming warship. "Commander," a subordinate said, voice shaking, "the remaining ships are trying to regroup, but they're all disoriented. Their shields are failing. The Tempest is too powerful for us to engage head-on." Zhyvok clenched his fists in frustration. "What about their cloaking technology? Can we track them?" The officer shook his head. "No, sir. They're using a unique signature. We can't find them with conventional methods." The reality of the situation dawned on Zhyvok. The Zilthari were no longer the apex predators of the galaxy. Humanity had defied all expectations. The galaxy's collective arrogance had been their undoing. A ship that was considered nothing more than a relic from a fallen species had just brought an empire to its knees. The power dynamics were shifting. The Zilthari's once unassailable position in the galaxy had been shattered by a species they had long dismissed. Meanwhile, back on the Tempest, Captain Drake stood silently as he observed the screens. The ship's sensors picked up the faint signals of the remaining Zilthari ships, still desperately trying to regain some form of order. Drake didn't have to say a word. His crew knew what to do. "Initiate EMP strike," Drake ordered quietly. The order was executed with surgical precision. A wave of electromagnetic pulses erupted from the Tempest, disrupting the Zilthari ships. Communication and navigation systems, one by one, their ships fell silent, their weapons inert, their defenses useless. The remaining Zilthari fleet had been reduced to a floating mass of damaged ships adrift in the void. "We've crippled their communications and navigation," Lieutenant Foster said, her voice still full of awe. "They're helpless." "Good," Drake replied, turning to face his crew. "Now we finish this. Target the largest ship. Let them see who they've underestimated." The ship's crew worked swiftly, activating the final phase of their plan. The Tempest's weapons, hidden behind the ship's dilapidated exterior, were now fully powered. A single, high-powered energy blast streaked from the ship's cannon, piercing through the center of the largest remaining Zilthari ship. The ship erupted in flames, its structure crumbling to pieces in a spectacle of destruction. The remaining Zilthari ships stood no chance. One by one, they fell until only one was left, a small, desperate ship attempting to escape into the depths of space. But the Tempest wasn't finished yet. Drake knew that mercy would only allow the Zilthari to rebuild. This would be humanity's message to the galaxy. No one, not even the most powerful empire, could underestimate Earth again. Prepare. For final strike, Drake ordered, his voice filled with cold determination. Let's end this. The final shot rang out, and the last of the Zilthari fleet was reduced to nothing but debris. The silence that followed was deafening. The crew of the Tempest stood motionless, watching as the remains of the fleet drifted in space. It was over. The Zilthari were defeated, and Earth had proven that no matter how much they were underestimated, they would always rise again. They had learned how to survive, and now the galaxy would learn to fear them. We've done it, Foster said, her voice filled with awe. Drake nodded, his gaze fixed on the stars beyond. No, he replied softly. We've just begun. Back in the Zilthari command center, Zivok could only watch in horror as his empire's pride turned to ash. The ships, once a symbol of invulnerability, were now nothing more than floating wreckage. He had no words, no explanation. This was a humiliation that would echo across the galaxy. The Zilthari had been bested, not by overwhelming force, but by the quiet, calculating determination of a species they had thought was beneath them. You were right, one of Zivok's officers whispered. We never saw them coming. The commander's eyes narrowed. He knew this would not be the end. The humans had just sent a message. The galaxy had been warned, and now Earth's slowest warship had just shattered the arrogance of an entire empire. The aftermath of the battle had left the Zilthari fleet in tatters, a broken shadow of what had once been the pride of their empire. The stars, once a vast and unreachable frontier, now seemed to press down on them like a weight, a reminder of their failure. In the black void of space, the debris from the Zilthari warships drifted aimlessly, their once formidable hulls now twisted fragments. There was no victory cheer, no boastful declarations from the humans, just the quiet hum of the Tempest drifting back into the shadows, its engines still cloaked, its crew watching in silence. Captain Elias Drake stood in the bridge of the Tempest, looking out at the empty space where the Zilthari fleet had once been. His expression was stoic, though his mind was alive with questions. They had won, but at what cost? How would the galaxy view this moment? Would they see it as a fluke, a stroke of luck, or would they finally recognize the strength of Earth? The ship's systems hummed steadily around him as Lieutenant Foster approached, her boots clicking softly against the metallic floor. She had a look of disbelief still etched on her face. Sir, I've confirmed it. All Zilthari ships are neutralized. There's nothing left but wreckage. They didn't stand a chance. Drake nodded but didn't respond immediately. He was thinking, calculating. The Zilthari had fallen easily, too easily. He knew that this battle would not go unnoticed. What would the other galactic powers think when they heard about it? The warlords of the galaxy were known for their arrogance, and none had ever shown Earth any real respect. Humanity's place in the cosmos had always been precarious, and this victory, while sweet, could attract dangerous attention. We need to report back to Earth, Drake said finally, his voice low, full of quiet resolve. Prepare the comms for a transmission. Let them know what we've done. Foster hesitated. Captain, are we sure about this? Broadcasting this to Earth? It could stir things up. Drake turned, locking eyes with her. His gaze was intense, focused. It's time, they knew. Humanity can't stay in the shadows any longer. We've been underestimated for too long. We've got the technology, the strength, and the will to survive. It's time to show the galaxy what Earth can do. Foster nodded, her expression hardening. She had come to realize, in the heat of battle, just how much this mission meant. This wasn't just about fighting the Zilthari. It was about sending a message to every empire, every alien race, that humanity was no longer the underdog. They had come into their own. As Foster began preparing the transmission, Drake turned back to the viewport. He stared at the distant stars, each one a potential enemy, or perhaps a new opportunity. The victory had been swift, but this was only the beginning. They had to be ready for what came next. He knew that the galaxy would respond, and he wasn't sure whether it would be with fear or anger. Either way, the Tempest and its crew had done what was necessary. They had fought back, and they had won. Meanwhile, far beyond the edges of the battle, the Zilthari command was in disarray. Zivok stood in front of a shattered control console, his thoughts a blur of rage and disbelief. He had never anticipated that the Tempest, a ship so primitive, so slow, would strike down his fleet with such ruthless efficiency. It was as though the ship had been hiding a secret, something that no one had ever seen coming. He slammed his fist against the console, the sound echoing through the empty chamber. "How did this happen?" he growled, his voice trembling with fury. His second in command, the creature with 4 eyes, approached hesitantly. "Commander, the humans, they have technology we cannot explain. The cloaking device, the EMP weapons. We've never seen anything like it." Zivok turned to him, his eyes burning with frustration. "What do you mean, we've never seen anything like it? We were supposed to be invincible. We were supposed to crush them easily." He paused, his breath coming in ragged gasps. "But they destroyed us," the officer swallowed nervously. "They were prepared, sir. The Tempest was no ordinary ship. They've been hiding their strength for years, waiting for the right moment to strike." Zivok's mind raced. This was no random attack. No, the humans had planned this. The Tempest had been bait, perhaps, a vessel that seemed like a throwaway, but in reality it was a carefully calculated trap. Humanity had played their cards perfectly, and they had won. "What now?" the officer asked, his voice soft. Zivok turned. To him, his face an unreadable mask. "We regroup," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "This isn't over. The humans have shown their hand, but they've only just begun to realize the consequences of their actions." Back aboard the Tempest, the crew had gathered in the mess hall for a rare moment of respite. There was a quiet celebration, but the weight of their victory hung in the air. No one was cheering loudly. No one was celebrating with the kind of exuberance that might be expected after such a decisive battle. There was only a shared sense of disbelief, mixed with a quiet understanding that this was only the first step. Drake sat at a table, his hands wrapped around a cup of coffee, his eyes distant. His mind was still processing everything: the battle, the victory, the implications. It had been a masterstroke, a stunning blow to the Zilthari, but now he had to deal with the aftermath. The galaxy would know what humanity was capable of, and there was no going back from that. Lieutenant Foster sat down across from him, a small smile on her lips. "You did it, sir. We did it. The Zilthari didn't stand a chance." Drake glanced up at her, his expression unreadable. "It wasn't just me, Foster. It was everyone on this ship. We worked together and we made it happen." Foster nodded, but her gaze never left him. "What now, Captain? What do we do next?" Drake took a deep breath. "Now we prepare. This victory is just the beginning. The Zilthari were the first, but they won't be the last. There are more empires out there, more threats. We've proven ourselves, but we need to be ready for whatever comes next." Foster frowned, sensing the weight of his words. "And if they come for us, Drake's eyes met hers, his expression hardening. Then we fight. We're Earth's last line of defense. We've already shown them what happens when they underestimate us. The transmission to Earth had gone out, and it was only a matter of time before the world learned of their victory. The people of Earth had long felt small, insignificant in the grand scope of the galaxy. But now that narrative was about to change. The Zilthari were the first to fall, but they wouldn't be the last. Earth had a new place in the galaxy, and it was one that would no longer be defined by weakness. But even as the message reached Earth far beyond the edges of known space, something stirred. In the depths of the galaxy, the larger empires that had long ignored humanity began to take notice. The Zilthari were powerful, and their defeat could not go unnoticed. The galaxy was about to change, and humanity, for the first time, would have a say in how that change unfolded. In the Zilthari command center, Zivok was already making plans. He had underestimated Earth once, but it would not happen again. The Tempest had proven that the humans were more dangerous than he had ever imagined, but they had no idea what was coming. They had won a battle, yes, but the war had only just begun. Zivok's voice echoed through the empty chamber. "Prepare for the next phase. We will rebuild, and when we strike again, humanity will regret ever challenging the Zilthari." His eyes glinted with cold fury. This isn't over, not by a long shot. As the officer left to carry out his orders, Zivok remained still, staring out into the void of space. The galaxy was changing, and Earth's victory had been the first sign of that change. But Zivok knew this. The Zilthari would rise again, and when they did, they would bring everything they had to bear on the humans, and humanity would be ready. Drake stood still as Foster's words sank in. Another fleet, not Zilthari. The galaxy was vast, and they had just become a target. The Tempest was the only thing between Earth and whatever power had decided to take notice of humanity's newfound strength. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers," Drake ordered, his voice calm but laced with urgency. "Activate the cloaking device and bring us to full alert." His crew moved quickly, the steady hum of the Tempest systems shifting into high gear. The ship had already been in stealth mode, but now Drake needed every ounce of their cloaking technology. They couldn't afford to be seen, at least not yet. Foster, her eyes fixed on the incoming ships, added, "They're not responding to our signals. It looks like they're preparing for an engagement. They're definitely military." Drake turned toward the crew, his face hardening. "Stay focused. We don't know who they are or what they want, but they won't catch us off guard. We've faced worse." The ship trembled as the Tempest shifted course, trying to buy time. Drake couldn't shake the feeling that this moment marked a new chapter for humanity. They had proven their strength, but that had only drawn the attention of the bigger players in the galaxy. The Zilthari were just the first to fall. Others were now sizing up Earth, and not all of them would be as easily defeated. "Are we ready to fight?" Foster asked, a note of tension creeping into her voice. Drake's eyes met hers. "If it comes to that, yes. But first we need to find out who these ships belong to. I'm not rushing into another war." The crew continued to monitor the alien fleet's movements, their eyes scanning every readout. No one spoke as the Tempest drifted, invisible in the cold expanse of space, waiting for the unknown enemy to make the first move. And there, on the edge of known space, a new chapter of humanity's journey was about to begin.